everyone. Welcome to TSP Weekly. This is your tech startup podcast for Thursday, October the 2nd, 2014. Today we are recording at, I don't know where we actually call this. We're somewhere between Communitech and Velocity. I guess is officially kind of part
We're
of
in the sweet
Velocity's
spot.
area. Yeah. We found that comfy center place in the midst of all the activity around here, which is great. My name is Darren Conley. I'm a local tech entrepreneur here in Kitchener-Waterloo. And with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, fellow tech entrepreneur, Stephen Campbell. How are you today, Stephen?
I am wonderful. It's interesting you picked up on that, actually.
Yes, excellent.
So I wanted to talk real briefly about the last time I talked about this. I was emulating with Ogre Battle on the Super Nintendo.
Right.
So going back to gaming again, I'm kind of excited about a new Canadian company, Ubisoft.
Right.
The Canadian
They're not a new
studio.
company.
No, not a new company, but a Canadian company. They're
Yes.
at least the studio here in Montreal.
Right.
Has been working on this new video game called The Crew.
Right.
So this is sort of an open world driving simulator game.
Right.
So I was talking
Sounds
to some
a
of the
little
guys.
Grand Theft Auto-ish.
Kind of, yeah.
All right.
Talking to the guys at Conestoga College, they were very excited because you can drive from sort of New York to California. You know, you can drive across the
Really?
the
They've
continent.
recreated the entire continent.
So you
in
could
this
actually
game.
drive, yeah. And
Wow.
I have mixed emotions about that because I've done that, and it was really exciting and really boring at times. And
Sure.
I don't think I want to do it again in a video game.
Sure. But if you could do it while you're, I guess you're
On my
accomplishing
couch.
something on the way, though, like killing
Tire
bad
upgrades.
guys or shooting aliens or something.
Yeah, so
No?
it's really neat. I'm
Yeah.
going to check it out. And I don't know, it's just a neat concept that it's an open world. You're just driving around. There's no Grand Theft Auto where I don't know that there's
It's not
bad
just
guys
in a
and
city
shooting.
or whatever? Okay.
It's just more driving and an open world concept. So it
yeah.
should be neat. Yeah.
All right.
Coming
well,
to a video game console near you soon.
We'll have to check it out. Very cool. Well, joining us today, guys, is Mr. Ivan Lukianchuk.
Yeah, hello.
I'm always afraid that I'm pronouncing the names wrong. But Ivan has been involved in a bunch of different startups. Most recent one was called This Is Your Out. And we'll hear a little bit more about that later on in the podcast. How are you doing today, Ivan?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
Pretty good, yeah.
Awesome. Sounds good. We're glad that you actually found us because we're in a completely different spot in the building here today, and I somehow using your location powers.
Spidey
I've been
senses.
room.
here since it opened, so I know where everything is.
Okay,
so.
That's awesome.
Yes,
Perfect.
the Matrix room is a very cavernous amphitheater today.
It's the biggest room I think we've ever recorded in. If you hear a bit of an echo, that's why we're in this large, much larger space. Well, let's talk about our first article we got on deck here today. There's an app called Launcher that if you have not used it yet, you will never probably get a chance to use it now. Rejected from the Apple Store. And typically we don't talk about apps that have been rejected, but I thought this one was of particular interest simply because it sounds like such a useful app, and now you're not going to be able to get to use it. The premise of this app was you could add shortcuts to your other apps that are on your iPhone to that notification screen, the screen you can kind of drag down from the top of iOS.
Right.
So you can have a list of, say, 7 or 8 shortcuts to your most frequently used apps, and you don't have to kind of go hunting through your phone to find them. You can have ready access to them at any time, which I thought was cool. It sounded very much like an Android-y kind of innovation to add to iOS. But the App Store folks have said, yeah, we don't want it. We don't want people to be able to do that.
Right, which is interesting because it's sort of the closed garden or the walled garden.
Yeah.
And for me, in this instance, I disagree with you. I think it's ridiculous. I wouldn't use it.
Why so?
My favorite apps, I know where they are because they're my favorite apps. So
All
I
right.
go to them all the time. I've been using an iPhone for 3 years. I've never gone to the notification center.
Okay.
So for me, it just is superfluous. And I almost think thanks, Apple, for keeping that garbage away from me because it's too crowded of a space and I don't need nonsense.
But see, something that I appreciate with my Android phone is that I can drag down that similar kind of notification bar and I can access my settings from anywhere. I can turn on and off mobile data if I want. I can, turn on flashlight or something. I can add those. Maybe it's not the ones that I use most readily all the time, but they might be apps that I want to find quickly in an emergency or something like that.
So wouldn't you just put those on your home screen, your desktop.
But maybe I don't want it to. I don't use my flashlight every day on my phone, so I don't want it cluttering up the home screen. But I do want to find it quickly if I find myself suddenly in the dark.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not that complicated. I just kind of.
Fair enough.
So for me, it's just more clutter, and it's more navigation that I kind of have to be aware of. I feel as I'm getting older that I'm missing out on shortcuts. So every time I see somebody swipe their phone with their ear, I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. So it's just more layers of complexity to me.
All right.
And I think Apple's done a good job in setting up their design and their layout. So
they don't want other people intruding on it, you think?
I am just okay with them doing that. Yeah.
Well, Ivan, let me ask you, first of all, are you an iOS user or are you an Android user?
Oh, I hate Apple with the passion of 1,000 suns, so I don't really have anything to add
like
here.
that.
I don't even get me started on them. But, So, I don't have too much to offer. I don't know much about iOS. It sounds like, again, you have a notification center. Yeah. I mean, I can understand if someone's building an app to kind of push functionality into alter how the OS is used or envisioned to be used. Yeah. Especially with Apple's case, I can imagine them being really anal about that and saying, no, this is how we've designed it. I mean, it's obviously there's a use case for some people. Yeah. But again, you picked the wrong team to try and make your own design decisions against.
To make that happen. That's true. Well, apparently they had 300,000 people download it in their first 9 days. So there was some traction there. I think they've demonstrated that this is a feature that people would want to use. Maybe it's just a case that Apple said, well, this is a feature that we're planning to build something like this or something very similar to this into iOS itself anyway. So we don't want, a third party kind of, building the reputation. According to the article that we read here on TechCrunch about this, there was apparently some security concerns that people could use it for, promoting apps through kind of the ad space, because I guess there's some advertising that pops up through this launcher that appears in that notification center, and so they don't want to kind of lose control of what's being advertised or what apps might be getting pushed into that ad space from the App Store into
it's almost like an
interesting bar.
It's an interesting business or a lawsuit kind of pending that you say instead of Apple buying them and saying we're going to incorporate it into our next OS, they've set up the walled garden and said, no, we can kick you out. Yeah. And now we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, potentially.
We don't have to buy you. We can just say, no, you can't do it anymore. But thanks for the idea.
Well, it's funny. I talked to, this is like a year or two ago, but a gentleman that used to be one of the higher-ups at BlackBerry, and he was telling me that they had a lot of discussions, behind the closed doors in BlackBerry about, okay, do we sue these people or do we buy them out? Right. It was kind of the one option or the other, right? And I wonder, in situations like this, if it's similar kind of circumstances.
Well, they sort of set it up that way, right? Because you're at the mercy of Apple because of their system, the way they've set it up. And it elicits some strong reactions in some.
Yeah, it's true. And I can see both sides of the argument. I'm an Android user myself. I don't like being forced to play in Apple's sandbox with all of their toys. Having said that, I do own an iPad, so I know a little bit about how they're doing things with their OSs, but I can understand them wanting to be protective and make sure that everything is playing nicely within their sandbox, so to speak. But at the same time, here's a company, they've built a product that people like, that apparently works well, that was getting a lot of traction, and I'm assuming they've got some dollars behind this product and everything, and with kind of a, I don't want to call it arbitrary, but with a very quick decision, Apple's kind of like, nope, and then all their work is flushed down the toilet.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't believe that it was arbitrary at all. Very quick, yes, but probably it's all business.
I'm just saying it can look that way sometimes, right? Yeah. You're not in our store. Sorry, your work is now worthless. Yeah. Back to the drawing board.
When in fact it's actually very worth a lot, and they're just going to use it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, potentially. Well, let's move on here, guys. This is something that I found really, really interesting. I don't know if I would be willing to use it myself or not, but we can talk about it a little bit anyway. Pavlok has this wristband which will deliver electric shocks to you if you are not fulfilling goals that you have, kind of set up through their application. It's made to kind of work as a motivator and a conditioning tool to help you be more productive and not get distracted, I guess. So, you know, for things like getting out of bed at a good time every day, or not surfing to Facebook when you're supposed to be doing your work, the wristband will communicate through its app with, you know, your other electronic devices, and if you misbehave, then it gives you a little zap to keep you on track. Apparently, it can also do things like post things to your Facebook feed to say, you know, you're wasting this much time today, and tell all your friends to kind of shame you into proper behavior. Or there was what was the other thing that it could do?
Sounds like a lot of
there was a few different ways that it can kind of train you. Yeah.
There's a lot of stick involved and not a lot of carrot involved in this app.
It's not going the rewards option.
Right.
It's going the other way. Now, having said that, the other way that it can kind of motivate you is to charge you money, which you yourself set up beforehand, right? You say, I got maybe $10 that I'm willing to wager against me changing my behavior.
It's like the swear jar. Every time you swear, you put $1 in it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And so the example it gives in the article here is, you know, say you want to be at the gym at a certain time every day and not slack off on your workout. The wristband can track whether or not you're inside the geofenced area of your gym, and say charge you $1 if you're not there within a certain time, right? So the reward side of it comes, and this is what I thought was really interesting. On the other side, you can, you can end up receiving the payment that other people have had deducted from them if you fulfill some of those goals. Now, I'm not sure the exact way that whole system is set up. I think they're still kind of experimenting with making that system work. But I like that idea of not just getting zapped or whatever, but that I could potentially earn a monetary reward for fulfilling my goals from those other people who are not fulfilling them somehow, right? So it's gone up on Kickstarter, I believe. I'm going to see if I can. Oh, it's on Indiegogo actually, and I think they've already raised, if not their goal, very close to it. When I checked yesterday, they seem to be really close. So we'll tell you in a second. Yeah, so they're at almost $65,000 they've raised, and their goal was $50,000. So this is in 2 days. So they seem to be doing all right. People seem to want to get shocked by their bracelet.
I wonder if Ernest Hemingway's in line to buy one.
I have no idea, man. And the name Pavlok, of course, a little play on words for Pavlov and his dogs, right? Ring the bell, makes them salivate, that kind of thing. So first of all, what's your first reaction when you hear about a device like this? Do you think this is a good idea? Do you think that this is, not going to go anywhere? I don't know. Ivan, what do you think?
It's not surprising. I mean, there's been apps that do this kind of thing before. And,
right.
Now that we're kind of in the hardware revolution, it wasn't a stretch to think, okay, someone's going to build a wristband for it and make it look nice. So the question is, does it actually come out? Can something fault in it and then shock you way harder and actually do you damage?
That's true. If you accidentally wear it in the shower, are you going to electrocute yourself? Yeah.
Also, I would say, the caveat of they've raised that money in 2 days is go back and look through the history, because even my own experience through Indiegogo is a lot of the campaigns will dump in 30 to 50 to 80% of the money themselves. And if you go back for enough, you'll see, $10,000 from the same name or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's more of a marketing tool than anything.
Sure.
But I can see it's like, someone's going to build it. It makes sense, but the people who really need it will never use it or buy it.
Right.
Other people will not care. It's a very, very small subset of users who really focus on self-improvement, know they have a problem and are willing to spend that money. But even some of those people, again, like I've done a lot of things to look at, self-improvement, discipline and whatnot. Yeah. And certain techniques work or don't work. So the money component, again, like someone deducts $1 or $2, it's like, who cares, right? I know how much I charge an hour. I throw $1 away for anything. There's got to be something. And I've done things in the past where I've paid a lot of money for a gym subscription and I still don't go. And it's kind of because the money's gone. I don't care. I've already spent the money. Yeah. So it's not like and that's me. Some people are saying, oh my God, I got to get the most work out of it. But
sure. But, it's an interesting point you make. Like, the people who need to use it the most are most likely people who would not buy it in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Because it's that sweet spot of, I am motivated enough to invest in a new piece of hardware that's going to deliver electromagnetic shocks or, shame me on Facebook, but I'm not quite motivated enough to actually get out to the gym every day or to, accomplish whatever those goals are. And that's a very fine line, I think, right?
There's a whole series called The Sword of Truth.
Okay.
By Mr. Goodkind, I think.
Okay.
And anyway, it's what I'm trying to get to is we need to wait till it goes from the armband to the neck bracelet or the collar.
Okay.
Because in this book series, this guy has invented a collar that takes away magician's magic.
Right.
So I think you could take it and say, if you put it on your neck, and it's really serious now, like it's going to hurt when you do something bad. So then you can say, when Ivan walks up to me and I go, "Oh my God, dude, you got the neck thing on? Like you're trying to quit smoking, and that's how you're doing it?" Then I would give a lot of kudos to him because that's really serious. Because if he smokes, it bam hits him. I think, and so the tickle on the arm, I think, is kind of silly. Like if you're going to do it, then go all the way. Like if you need that level of help to be shocked. Yeah. Then I think there could be something to go extreme with it. Right. But I think this little buzz on the arm kind of thing is just kind of silly. Like, I think you have to go big or go home.
But apparently you can adjust the amount of voltage it delivers. Now, I'll tell you my experience with something not exactly like this.
Did you get shocked?
It was a shocking thing, yes. So there's a board game, a quote-unquote board game, where...
Operation doesn't count. That's just
a sound.
It's not
Operation, man. It's not Operation. I wish I remembered the name of it. I'll see if I can look it up. But it's a thing where you're holding... There's a handle of some sort that you hold onto, and it's plugged into the board, and there's say up to 4 players. Each one of them holds a little handle, and I think that it was a very simple thing. There was like a light that comes on the board, and you have to hit a button on your handle, and the last person to hit that button gets a little jolt kind of thing, right? It's like, how fast can you react? Or you could set it so like only the first person who hits the button doesn't get jolted and everybody else does. But I'll tell you this, and maybe this is just me, I don't like getting electric jolts. I played this game for literally 30 seconds, and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. But jolted? I had a friend, like my friend who was showing me this game is one of these guys who is very, like, I don't know, he has that personality that likes to keep poking you until you react, one of those kind of people, right? Mm-hmm. And so a game like this appealed to him a lot to kind of see his friends get zapped. And I thought, when I heard about this bracelet, I was like, I think that would be enough incentive for me to not get zapped, to stay off Facebook or to make it to the gym or do whatever. Having said that, I'm not about to go out and buy it. Not yet. I think I have to get to a certain level of desperation in my own levels of self-control before I would be ready to do something like that. But maybe I'm just not quite in that demographic yet.
I think it's one of those... It's one of those things where it's a challenge because for the creators, it's probably like, they're a very specific subset of people, and they're probably entrepreneurs or very go-getters, so they could use it and try to improve themselves. It's one of those things where everyone says, I know someone who could use that.
Right.
But those people would never buy it, and it's probably like $60, I think, or something. You would never buy it as a gift because it's too expensive.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to say, look, you need to quit smoking, so here's something that'll shock the shit out of you so you don't smoke anymore.
And they say, great, and then it's like, I just blew $60 on you, and you're not even going to use it.
Yes, that's right.
It's in one of those tough spots where, again, it's if you can go to like someone who has a self-help book. There's a lot of really good authors that have good self-help books and stuff. You can bundle with that and say, hey, here's part of a package. We'll give you like this device for $20 or it comes with the book.
Right.
It could really change things, and it's part of a program, right? It's not just like hey, this is a cool thing.
Right.
I'd like to see like some science and like a 12-step program or something where you can say, okay, you put it on, you get 17 shocks. By your 18th shock, you're going to do it 20% less, or where's the numbers and the metrics and all that kind of stuff.
I'm sure they have it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's if they don't have it, they're developing it, right?
Yeah, making it up. You mean?
Yeah, or maybe that. And the price, I think, incidentally, according to the Indiegogo page here, it looks like about $150.
$150. Okay,
that's a little bit outside gift range, right? And it's a little embarrassing to give somebody a gift like that and say, like, you really need to clean up your act. I'm not judging you at all. Here's a gift.
Yeah, and $150 right? to be on Facebook less.
Yeah. So maybe, like you're saying, for that very narrow subset of, say, like startup entrepreneurs who want to stay productive, right? And this kind of tails into a much larger discussion about how so many people in the tech startup world are building startups kind of aimed at their own demographic, their own very narrow demographic.
It's a horrible demographic. Absolutely horrible
demographic. Sure.
It's true.
But yeah, I mean, one way or another, they seem to be doing okay on their crowdfunding campaign. We'll have to see in the long term if this is something that goes somewhere or just quietly drops off the map. But
a startup founder that is looking at this to buy, to put in his arm, to not be distracted, has already lost the game because he's too distracted. If he's on Indiegogo looking at an armband to tell him not to be distracted, there's troubled waters ahead.
Well, and maybe
it's for startup people who are playing the game,
right?
In the game,
right?
And but maybe it's a product that you only have to use for a few weeks or a month to get your habits changed, and then you can take it off and keep going.
Yeah, we can make you quit smoking in 2 months.
Right, but then that raises a whole other issue of you bought a product that's only going to be used for a few weeks, and if it's successful, and then it becomes obsolete because you've already altered your behavior. Anyway, we'll see how things go. We'll have to track a little bit more of where this company goes with Pavlok. But let's move on to our third article here, guys. This is an app. I guess you could call it an app for sports fans called Fanmode. And really, I guess the idea behind this app is getting the sports fans who are just watching sports on television at home, giving them an outlet to participate in what's actually going on at the game itself. So this is an app where you can share your reaction to the action as it's going on by kind of swiping your finger in one direction or another. You can say whether you're happy, or you could boo, or you could clap, or whatever. You can wave your phone in the air if you're really
like
excited.
You just don't care.
Like you just don't care. That's right.
Sorry, Ivan.
And then on the other side of the equation, they have the idea is to have like the display board up at the actual stadium where the sporting event is going on, displaying the statistics of the people using the app who are participating, quote unquote, participating in the fan base now for the game. So they can show how many people at home are clapping and waving their hands or booing a ref's call on a play or whatever it might be. Now, I myself am not a huge sports fan. I've been to, a bunch of Blue Jays games. I've been to a bunch of like CFL football games. My dad has season tickets for the Hamilton Ticats. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I've been out to there. I can't remember if I've even been to a basketball game. I think I saw the Harlem Globetrotters once when I was a kid.
Then you have. Then you've seen it all.
There we
go.
Start
at the top.
And hockey, I don't think I've been to any hockey games in my life. Which
are you allowed to
maybe
say that
I got to
Canada?
turn in my Canadian citizenship card for saying that. I don't know, but one way or the other.
What about cricket, Darren? Have you seen any cricket?
I have not been to cricket. I've seen people play cricket in parking lots when I was living in the Middle East. That's about it. But having said that, I really can appreciate a sport for the most part. I can appreciate a sport if I'm there seeing it live. If somebody else has bought me tickets and I can go and sit in the stadium and hear the roar of the fans around me, I do get into the game a lot more than if it's just on TV. And I would never just watch sports by myself sitting at home on TV, ever. I would only do it if I was with a crowd of friends or with my dad. Occasionally we'll watch, football together or something.
So all the way from golf to a baseball game to wrestling, you would never sit down and watch any TV.
Not alone. Only with somebody else who happens to be a fan.
So
of
if
it.
you had this app, then you could be not alone at your house. So you're watching it by yourself, but you're participating with virtual
I guess it's one
buddies.
step closer, right? Is the idea. And having never used the app yet, I don't know if that would draw me in or not, but I think this is what they're aiming for, right?
It's not really a new space. Like I am a sports guy, and have spent a lot of time in sports bars and have gone to a bunch of sporting events. And I almost think this is a concert thing you could do too.
Yeah.
With
if the concert was being broadcast live.
Well, the whole way the music industry is changing, right?
Okay.
With all the downloads and that whole thing. But sticking with the sports theme for now, this has been done in sports bars before, where you go in and you're watching the game and you can get one of the little boxes And you can play either trivia or you can play poker, and they've incorporated it with the football games. So you can be watching football and predicting the play. I think they're going to pass it, or I think they're going to run it.
I'd never seen that, actually, but that's cool.
You need to get out to more bars and watch more sports.
So. Just don't hang out in those sports bars.
So that's in the bars right now, so that you're not really communicating with the people in the stadium that are watching the game live, but you're communicating with the other sportsters or drinkers or whatever in the bar, right?
Sure.
So,
but I think if you're in a bar, you're already kind of one step closer to that group participation experience, right? There's kind of like you at home by yourself on the couch. There's you with 30 or 40 or 50 other people in a sports bar.
All cheering for sort of the home team or whatever.
That's right. Yep. And then there's you at the stadium with 15 or 20,000 people that are all kind of participating, right?
Or 80 if you're in the U.S.
Yeah, so
80,
maybe
000.
if you're in the sports bar cheering along, you're already not kind of the target demographic for something like this because you've already taken one step closer to that experience. Are you into sports at all, Ivan?
No, not at all.
No?
I couldn't. I mean, all your experience, I don't think I've ever been in any professional level games except for maybe one CFL game when I was fairly young.
Fair enough.
Do you see it on the music side, though? Because I know you're a music fan.
Yeah, I go to a lot of concerts. I don't think this would be useful in concerts. Because you're in a concert, you're busy. You're watching the concert. Your hands are in the air. You're moving around. Unless it's like a big seated stadium concert, in which case, I don't know. I mean, if you're going to be looking at your app, you're going to be, you. What the hell are you doing here? Taking a seat,
exactly.
right? So for sports, again, I'm not a sports fan. When I watched hockey with my buddies in university, because we all lived together, they all watched hockey as they had strong opinions.
Right.
We get to sit with them, and you get into it, and you get emotional, and you can just be a dick, or you just have fun with it.
Sure. And
I can see where the emotional part comes from. And again, like you said, when you're in a bar, there are other people, and you can take that energy.
Yeah.
But when you're alone, again, if you're a sports fan and you're alone, you have no friends that you're watching with. It's like, are you watching just because you're a fan? Are you going to talk to your friends about it later?
Yeah.
Is, watching it and then thumbing up on an app really going to make you feel better? I mean, if you're, there's one part about connecting to a stadium. And if you see on the stadium, there's a big scoreboard that says, oh, look, 80% of the home people are agreeing with all the people in the stands doing this. Or the people in the stands can say, oh, yeah, everyone at home agrees with us.
Right.
It might be kind of cool. And there is a level of engagement if that functionality exists.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, would anyone actually get off their ass and do it or care enough?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's some value there probably for a few core types of people. But,
sure.
It's hard to blend the stadium experience with the home experience. Like in the NFL right now, a big thing that's going on in Seattle and Kansas City is they're paying money, these stadiums, to bring the Guinness Book of World Records out, and they're breaking the sound record in each, and they keep going back and forth. Like Kansas City had
cheering?
It was like 143 decibels or something. It's like deafening,
Yeah.
And then they went to Seattle, and they brought all their recording equipment, and the Seattle went crazy, and they broke the thing. So they just had a Monday night football game, which I watched by myself at my house.
Right.
Sorry.
Sure. No problem.
So now that I can talk to you guys about it, I guess. But they broke the record again. So Guinness was there again. So Monday night. So now Kansas City has the record again. So I don't know how you tap into that.
Yeah,
without being there, right?
Well,
but there is a thing that happens at stadiums, the wave, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that you do there where you don't do at home or you don't do in the bar. No bars are doing the wave, right?
Right. Well, I'll tell you something that does appeal to me as far as engagement kind of from afar is sometimes like here at Communitech when they have conferences and speakers and stuff, a lot of times we were at one just earlier this week, Stephen, where there were some startups presenting and looking to hire talent.
The talent collision.
And then they had, that's right, but then they had up on the big screen on either side an app. What was the app? Eventbrite. Eventbrite, that's the name of it, where anybody who's tweeting photos about the event, at the event, you can see them pop up on the big screen as it's going on. And
I really wished I had done something different with my hair that night.
It's all good, man. But I like that engagement of I can be in the audience or I can be one of a crowd of 150 or 200 people, sending something out on my phone and having it appear for the whole room to see. I think there is something to that makes people want to participate. I think when you're talking about an app like this at a sporting event where you're one of literally, possibly, several million people watching a Monday night football game, an NFL game, if I could do something at home and then see my whatever I did come up on my TV screen or for everybody in the world to see, or come up on the big screen at the stadium, then yes, I'm ready to jump in and participate. But if I'm just one statistic of several million people that's being aggregated to display some statistics on a screen somewhere, I don't really care.
You can get bored of it really fast.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a big thing you've just tapped into there, that it's your 2 seconds or 10 minutes of fame, right? So my son went, he plays football here for the local Twin Cities. He's a Warhawk. So they went to Toronto and they got onto the field, and the Toronto Argonauts were going to play. And at halftime, they got on and they got a clip on TV. Wow. So it was on TSN. Yeah. And, that just spread like wildfire. So the thing that everybody talked about wasn't the opportunity to go to Toronto and meet the Argonauts and get on the field. Yeah. Everything everybody talked about was, I was on TV for 2 seconds. Sure. So that whole opportunity was narrowed down to just that. So I think you got something there where there's that energy of desire to get on TV. I don't know that the stadium wants to see a bunch of guys in their house sitting on the couch cheering for the game. Right. But I think the guy on the couch wants to see himself on TV. So if you could do that somehow, there's a magical thing there that would motivate a ton of people, I think. Yeah, and there's some visualization here, at least in the article, showing that it can come up with your face and your name and where you're from, and saying this person is waving their app now or something like this, and it shows like 2 people on the scoreboard. But once again, you're one of millions. Like the chances that you're going to be displayed are minuscule. Like I don't know if it would hold enough appeal for the chance. It's kind of like less than the lottery. It's like winning the lottery, but actually you don't really get much for it. Yeah, exactly. It sounds like all the stuff you're talking about again with the Guinness thing. It's a marketing way to get the people in the stands enjoy it more, to buy another ticket, to get the people at home to say that's fun. I want to buy a ticket. And this might just be a tool for the stadiums to say, hey, look, now all the people at home, you can see them as you're in the stadium. You go to the scoreboard and say, oh, the people at home agree with me. Yep. This is awesome or whatever. But really, who's the customer? Right. Who's really, who's being sold? Well, perception is reality. Everything is marketing, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of what's going on in TV land these days is finding new ways to get people to watch live TV instead of just PVRing and skipping the commercials and everything else, because the value for television shows is for people to watch it live and sit through the commercials, right? So any way that you can kind of get people engaged there and then at that moment, it's potentially of greater value for them. So I think this might be just another way of getting that, right? It's about money and advertising. It's not about creating or communicating your creative vision. Like the Cosbys, that was just such good television. That was about pudding pops, eh? The TV shows are only incentive to get you to stick around for the commercials. To buy pudding pops, down Bill to, Cosby, right? Darn you. At least in the old style of TV. But well, listen, guys, that kind of covers all the articles that we had on the table here today. Let's talk a little bit more with Ivan and find out a little bit more about where he's coming from, what he's been up to, and where the heck he's going, and where he's going exactly. If we can predict the future, we haven't had very much success in the past. But anyway, I'll tell him what he's going to have for dinner tonight. That'll be fun. So, Ivan, you've been around in kind of the startup ecosystem in this area for a while now. How long have you been hanging out in this part of the world? So I came to the University of Waterloo in 2003. Okay. And I probably started going to events around 2004, 2005. Okay. Communitech events. So you've got like a decade. Under your belt, pretty much. Yeah, it was. That was like in second year. I started getting involved in entrepreneurship stuff on campus, and I started realizing there's all these events, and this is the best place to start a startup. And sure, And what have you kind of seen as far as the evolution of the quote unquote startup ecosystem around here, like back in 2005 compared to now? Like, I was a lot younger and knew very much less back then. And the word startup wasn't really a thing back then, from at least what I remember. It was like, I'm an entrepreneur, I want to start a business. Right. Is it going to be a small business? Is it going to be something that grows, or an internet type of business? Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of grown exponentially and really taken off in just like the last 4, 5, 6 years. Right. And I remember like when the Accelerator Center opened, that was a big thing, and there was a bunch of companies that went through, and it was kind of like the generation before me that were actually old enough,
to do stuff. And now it's kind of cool, years down and kind of see them. And they've gone through their first startup. They've moved on to the next one, and they can pass down that advice. And you can see the whole new generation. I mean, I was in the first group of Velocity when it opened. And it was a small room in the back of this building when this building just opened.
Wow.
And seeing some of those startups and where they've gone and how big things have happened. And, out of nowhere, this thing, Y Combinator, started becoming huge and massive. Back then, it was like, I don't think anyone really heard about it or talked about it.
Right.
Not in this area anyways. And the whole terminology of startups really just started taking off, and it became more of a advertised, celebrated, promoted thing.
Wow. Yeah. Now, you said you were part of the first Velocity crowd. Like, what were you doing with Velocity back then?
That's when I was working on my first startup, Will Own for Food.
Okay.
It was a gaming startup. We made fast action 3D games. You could play right in the web browser for actual cash and prizes.
Wow.
And
how did you get the cash and prizes to distribute? Did you have
people
sponsors?
would pay to enter.
Okay.
So like 15 players would join for $1. Top 5 people split the pot.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And so tell us the story about that. It's you started. Was it just you yourself who started that?
Yep. So I was a solo founder.
Were you building the games, or you had other games?
No, we built the game. We built the game. We built the platform. We were building everything. So it was just myself. Always wanted to do something entrepreneurial or whatever.
Yeah.
Computer scientist from the University of Waterloo.
Yeah.
So basically, I had a cool idea. I said, like, you know what? I'm a competitive gamer, not like super competitive, but enough that, I do like to play multiplayer games. I like to beat other people or have good challenges because those are exciting. And, you can put hours and hours and hours into it and go to these, poorly organized tournaments and get nothing out of it.
Right.
Right. And yet someone can, put the same amount of hours into something else and make a lot of money for like sports or any other sort of skill-based tournaments.
And what are you doing? Like first-person shooters? Or are you doing,
so it was a third-person 3D game. Okay. It was called Dodgebots. Basically, there was a circular arena. 15 players would join. They'd go in this arena. There'd be a cannon up on the wall that could spin around the outside and shoot, basically trying to like shoot fish in a barrel.
Right.
And your goal was to stay alive as long as you can, and all you could do is run around and dodge. Yeah. So it's called Dodgebots.
Yes.
And, I think I saw that now that you mention it. It's funny because I didn't associate that with you at all. But I remember
that was mine. So basically,
cool.
you'd stay alive. So basically, you use your skills to pay the bills.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
There's a tagline.
There's a tagline. That's right. Put your money where your mouth is.
Now, I should let you know, back, I'm trying to remember when this was. It was when I was living overseas, so it was probably like 2010, maybe, 2009, 2010. My wife had gotten really good at playing like Zuma. And remember Zuma, that game where you shoot the marbles? She likes the puzzle games, right?
Yeah.
And a few other games, like Bejeweled, these kind of games like this. And there was a website. What's that?
Farmville?
Not Farmville. No. She didn't get into Farmville. But there was a website out there, at least one website, that had the same kind of thing, competitive gaming, where you pay a small fee to join a tournament, and it matches you up with players kind of your same skill level. And if I paid, say, $1, say we pay $1 each, there's 10 people in the tournament, I think the top person would win like $8 or maybe $6 or something, and then the second place a little bit less, and then the website takes another piece. I thought it was a very interesting business model. We stopped doing it because you get into all these questions of like, how closely are they actually matching you to people who really are at your skill level, or does the company have like highly skilled players that they employ just to take the money from the people and beat them? But
it's hard not to think about nefarious conspiracy theories when you start losing.
Well, right? Or people building bots to play for them perfectly and win money and whatever else. So, right? Did you have any like legal issues to deal with when it comes to like, it didn't cross over into like gambling?
No, it's also like those games, like our game is a skill game.
Sure.
There's no chance systemic to the game, which means legally it's not gambling. And,
all right. So there's no regulation factors?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's close to the edge. It's a grayish area for some people, but the law is there.
Right.
And so again, like what you described was casual skill gaming. We were doing hardcore skill gaming,
right?
Which really didn't exist so much. But again, a game like Zuma. Zuma's a game too you see in bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My wife loves Zuma and plays those types of games. I think those games they don't interest me.
No,
so,
right. Yeah.
But those people are they can be very competitive and whatnot. But for the people who are, I'd say, the hardcore gamers, and they live and breathe, first-person shooters or gaming. That's their thing, right? Like, they're the ones that can't go out and actually make money with their skills. Not an easy way. So that was the purpose.
Wow.
Will Own for Food is to have a fun way to play skill-based games that are legal and actually make money, and you're not playing at like an esports level,
right?
But just a generally competitive person can go in, they can pay $1, have 15 minutes of fun, because when you have money on the line, it does increase the excitement.
Yeah.
Even if you lose, you just you feel like oh my god, that was a ride. Right. So it's kind of building an experience and the opportunity to say in 15 minutes, I just won $20, now we can go for dinner.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about it or anything like that. So
absolutely. I was always fascinated with the Twin Cities. Sort of the video game high score referees, if you will. Are you familiar with those guys at all in California? So they made their whole thing by being the judges or the referees of who's got the highest Pac-Man score, who's got the highest Donkey Kong. They were talked in that Player Up movie. But they were back in the day, 10, 20 years ago, they were the guys that would come out and videotape you playing an arcade game to see that, yes, you were the highest score of Pac-Man.
Yeah. You're talking about that movie, the documentary King of Kong, I think, right?
Yeah, so this is a company. It's actually a man who started Twin Cities, and they represent themselves as the judges of high scores and video game stuff. So that was always interesting to me. As the arcades died, that kind of died. But that model of sort of it's the guy that runs the tournament, right? Yeah. So you verify and you all come in. And so just that whole thing of being the video game referee or judge. And they also went to the data model to say, here's all the games, here's all the high scores, here's all the people, here's all the, so you have all that database of information about the history of games and who's got the highest Dig Dug score.
Sure.
We need to know that kind of stuff. So,
some people care.
Yeah. And if you don't, you should.
So what happened? What was the kind of evolution of Will Pwn for Games Pwn for Food?
And do we pwn or do we just own? Because I'm still confused.
It's either or. It depends on how old you are and
looked down upon
what camp you take.
Sure, right? Sure.
I mean, I was inspired by pure ownage.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was amazing. I loved that show. And those guys were in Toronto, and they said ownage, or own, right? But then, younger gamers or people and other things will say pwn, and there's no real rule. It's a made-up word, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of fun to say pwn because then you're just being a dink.
Right.
And then it just catches on.
Wait a minute, what's a dink?
Yeah.
Fair enough. So is it still around? Or?
No. It's done, unfortunately. And so I spent about 4.5 years on it.
Wow.
So it's quite the startup journey, learning a lot. It was just myself.
Yeah.
Looking for co-founders, getting people, firing people,
wow.
Getting virtual talent, winning competitions. So we raised like 4 or 5 different rounds.
Wow.
So we raised over $300,000 on angel funding. I'm trying to think. So we raised our first angel round, then we went to the Launchpad 50K business pitch competition. The first one, I got second place, as well as the People's Choice Award.
Awesome.
Shortly after that, I got into the first cohort of the Hyperdrive Accelerator here at Communitech.
Isn't Launchpad Laurier?
No, it was Launchpad 50K venture competition.
Yeah.
Not a different Launchpad.
There are so many Launchpads these days.
There are a lot. Yeah. This wasn't at Cape Canaveral?
No, not that one. Then we got some money from BDC, one of the few companies to get that, and then we raised a little bit more money and grew from myself to about 7 people. We probably had 9 or 10 different people throughout, but hired, fired, let go.
Sure.
And eventually, we just ran out of money. We couldn't raise any more. We couldn't get to the point we needed to be, and learned a lot along the way.
Sure.
But it's very expensive, very difficult making video games, especially in our case, because they were fast action, real time multiplayer games. They were 3D games, which is harder than 2D games.
Yep.
They were multiplayer only, so you get a chicken and egg scenario where if there's not enough people, you can't even play.
Right.
They were actually 3D games right in a web browser, so you didn't even need a separate client, which was very new at the time.
Yeah.
And they were authoritative multiplayer games, so security was paramount. Again, you're playing for money. You didn't want any hacking or cheating. So again, you'd have one server that's managing everything. So it's a bit of a different game, a little more complex to run. So we had quite the setup on Amazon Web Services, and we had to do 2 or 3 rebuilds where we scrapped the entire code base.
Wow.
Switched platforms and
with something that's that intense as far as all the specifications, right? I mean, you can't kind of go into it half-hearted to test it necessarily in the same way as you could with Angry Birds or something much more simple, right?
Yeah, somebody hacks the collision and all of a sudden the ball's going right through his guy and he's flipping the computer table up.
Yeah.
And,
and if there's money on the line, you can't afford to screw up either, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, we had...
Wow, interesting. Okay, so that took you to when did you stop doing that then?
I think now time just kind of blurs away. That was probably like October of last year. So probably actually around a year ago is when we kind of finally said, it was down to me and a developer, and we were working for 2 months with zero money.
Right.
And then we just said, okay, we got to get jobs. We're going to go bankrupt, or we got to do work. So
so
we kind of put it on hiatus, and I looked around at raising more money, and none of the deals would have made sense.
Sure.
So basically, I started the next phase of life, which is, looking what do I want to do next, moving on, dealing with all that, doing freelancing, exploring, working with different people. Yeah. And then eventually I came to my next startup, which was This Is Your Out.
Yeah. Now tell us a little bit about This Is Your Out. I think Stephen and I saw you pitch once or twice about it. I thought it was a really cool idea. It was getting a lot of attention. So just give us a quick summary of how This Is Your Out works.
Yeah. So This Is Your Out is a small hardware device. We call it the TIYO, which stands for This Is Your Out. Yep. And basically it's to get you out of unwanted situations.
Right.
Like the dentist's office.
Like dentist's office, yeah. Maybe not necessarily that kind. But, it's social situations. So if you're stuck talking to someone, for example, everyone knows everyone. Someone who they never shut up, and it's really hard to break in and just say, hey, yo, I got to go, right? And they just yappity.
Sure.
And so in those situations, again, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. Either you can be a dick about it and just say, yo, I got to go, or whatever.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have that personality type.
Yeah.
Or you sit through it and you suffer through it, and then finally you're like, God, I just wasted an hour when that was should have been 5 minutes.
And you think, couldn't there be a piece of technology that could help?
Yeah, how do I get out of this, right? And so we sort of said, you know what, there's just situations like this. So we made a little hardware device, it's a little button on a keychain.
And it drops a piano on the person you're talking to?
Yeah, I wish. You stick it in your pocket, you hit it stealthily, and a few seconds later your phone rings. And you say, oh, look, I'm sorry, I got to take this. And it gives you an easy way to get out of a situation where, again, it's more like a little white lie. It's something that a lot of people do anyways, right? They say, oh, yeah, my phone's vibrating. Sorry, I got to go.
Yeah.
And I've heard some funny stories about how that backfired.
Really?
Yeah, one guy I was talking to here, actually, he said he was talking to his friend or whatever, and then his friend said, oh, my phone's vibrating. It's my sister. But he didn't realize he was holding his phone up in his hand the whole time he was talking to the guy. And so he reaches his pocket and he's looking and he just sees the guy's eyes widen as he looks and realizes he just lied straight to his face with the phone in his hand, clearly didn't activate. And he's like, oh, I got to go.
This has to be on like the little training module for using it, right?
How not to
Make sure the phone is not in your hand.
Well, you could just say, oh, that was a phantom leg. I felt it vibrate. And my sister's vibrate is a specific one,
Sure.
So there's many situations where if you're not the right personality type, you can't get out of it. There's certain situations. There are difficult situations, like in a workplace, right, where you're stuck talking to a boss or someone who can make your life miserable.
Yeah.
And you just want to get out of there because you can't stand them or they're just wasting your time. And you can't tell them to f*** off, right? Like, there's no easy way to get out. So you kind of create an opening, and came from my wife. It was her idea.
Yeah.
She works with someone who never shuts up. Everyone knows about this guy. She stuck with him as a rep. She went to their office one day, and everyone else that worked with him had a secret policy that if this guy ever went to someone's office, if he didn't leave after 10 minutes, you'd have to call the victim or the guy would never leave.
Right.
So they can all watch each other's back because this guy, and I never thought I'd meet him, but I did meet him. And he never stopped talking to me.
So is he aware? Because I've heard this story before. So is he now aware that he was the genesis of this?
I don't know if he knows.
He doesn't shut up long enough for anybody to tell him?
No, because if when he talked to me, he didn't know. He obviously didn't know, or he would have said something about it. And he's just, I think he genuinely doesn't know that he's talking, right? He just thinks, everything goes in the next conversation. He thinks he's having a good conversation. He's your best bud, and
whatever piece of the social, level of social competence that people usually have, he's just missing that
He's missing that little piece.
And he's missing the shut-off valve.
Yeah.
And some people are missing that. And again, it leads to, and one of the things that's polarizing too is some people see the device and think that's stupid. I would never need that. I don't see why anyone would ever need that. You're f***ing wasting your time, right?
Right.
And I got that from a few people, and I understand that, but all the people I talk to are type A entrepreneurs. They don't need this device, right?
It's the introverts.
It's the introverts, right? The introverts are the beta males are the people. I've always been growing up as a nerd and introvert and whatnot. And it's not my personality to, I'm more of a polite person. I don't want to, cause ripples. And I know people who would rather die than cause a ripple.
Yeah.
Right?
And
several Canadians, yes.
So it's very Canadian in a way, right?
There are people who spend years and years in friendships or relationships that they want to get out of, but just don't. They just can't say, like, I don't want to talk to you.
And they're just one phone call away from that dream being a reality.
Potentially.
So it's just kind of it's a little way. It's an easy way to get out of situations.
Sure.
So basically, from concept to basically putting it out there. We talked about the idea probably last August. sort of thought about it. And again, I'm a software guy. I don't know too much about hardware design.
Right.
I can put together a computer, but in terms of actually making circuit boards and stuff, that's a little beyond me.
Yeah.
So I said, this is a good chance at least to learn something. I'm going to learn about hardware, which is really hot right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn about crowdfunding, which I've been very intrigued by.
Sure.
So I spent a number of months talking to a lot of different hardware people in town, and there's a lot of great companies that came out of Velocity. There's like Pebble, there's Thalmic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who else is the guys who made the pallet. Did
Oh,
their Kickstarter. And so there's a lot of people who are very experienced, or they're mechanical engineers, right? Or electrical engineers that came out of the University of Waterloo.
Yep.
And so talking to them, understanding, how do I make this? Where do I start? Trying to learn, because I know I can learn things if I spend enough time and going into it, but it's a different world.
And it's awesome that there are so many people in this area that can come alongside and help, and people who are willing to kind of sit down and say like, oh yeah, let's talk about this. Let's see if we can figure
That's a great
out,
thing
right?
about the community, and I guess entrepreneurs in general, at least around here, they're always willing to give, sit down and give an ear and exchange advice, and I love to do it too. And so I learned a lot, learned where to get started. I hit some roadblocks, and they say, well, why not just do it this way? And it's like, all right, now I don't even have to build an app.
Right.
So, eventually I said, okay, I need to figure out how much it's going to cost to build this thing, because I want to run a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah.
And again, the last thing you want to do is run a crowdfunding campaign without actually knowing how much the hardware is going to cost, how long it's going to take, because you've seen all the horror stories, right? It's like, oh, we didn't actually think it would cost this much money, or it's going to take an extra year or two. So I want to make sure I didn't, screw that up.
Yeah.
So looking around, it's definitely hard to find that kind of information. It's not where software you can just sit down and do it yourself or go on a forum. It's everything's so unique and closed off. Eventually, I found an engineering firm out of Toronto, Inertia Engineering, and sat down with them and worked through an entire plan. And basically, they said, okay, here's the timeline. Here's how much it'll cost. Here's how much each part will cost. Here's when you need to have the money ready.
Right.
So then I could, work backwards and say, this is how much I need to raise to actually be able to produce the first X units.
Right.
This is when it should ship.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of work involved. And
that's a great exercise for learning to go through. And
and that's what you should be doing no matter what your startup is. You need to know that whole process, especially before you advertise it. So I probably spent a lot of time researching it.
Yep.
Probably most of the money I spent a good deal of money on this project.
Yeah.
A little more than I wanted to, but I spent most of it probably on marketing.
Sure.
Because that's the big thing, right? If you can't make the crowdfunding campaign work, you can't get your initial money. And in hardware, it's incredibly hard to start without money.
Of course.
Like the minimum 85 to 90K, or you cannot get anywhere.
Right.
So again, most hardware campaigns are around $100,000.
Yeah.
Like if I can't raise it, then I'm done.
Right.
I'll look at what else is there, but I've learned something and I move forward.
Sure.
So we weren't able to raise our money, which is unfortunate. But I'm looking at a few other opportunities to potentially get that engineering paid for, and then find new ways to push it out and market. And a lot of people come and say, this is one of the greatest marketing campaigns I've seen around in the area.
Right.
We really love the videos. People really love the videos, and I'm really proud of them.
I got to say, like, I was surprised how much kind of word of mouth kind of press you guys were getting, right? Because the concept itself is it's a very viral kind of idea. And it's a very easy to, how would you say this? It's cool to generate those kind of stories, right? About awkward situations and how you dealt with them. And so when we saw you written up in, some of the local papers and I guess Global and CBC and some, the more wider ranging Canadian news sources were covering it, they always had people telling those kind of stories as part of it, which I thought was really awesome. And the videos too, like same thing, right? Like something that everybody can relate to that experience, and then it just comes down to like, would they want to use the product or not, or is this the way it's packaged? Do people see this as a use case they can relate to or whatever? But certainly the situation, I think it connected with a whole lot of people for sure.
Yeah. And it did have a fairly decent reach. And it was just me doing the whole thing, so I learned a lot about marketing and really doing a product launch.
Now, did you create the videos, or was it somebody in town?
It was a local. I worked with a local team. They did all the all the shooting and editing and all that, and we worked together on the concepts and the scripts and whatnot.
Awesome.
And that's George Briggs Media.
Okay.
So again,
GB, they're doing the GB 51 on Fridays up. It's a new communal artist space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're a great place. I'm always happy to make intros to them. Same with Inertia Engineering. If anyone ever is listening and they think I want to talk to some people that can do full scale, like they'll do it from building out the PCBs, testing it, getting the manufacturing, building for manufacturing, packaging. Like from you want to pay someone to do from start to finish and not have to hire like 10 different people that only know their parts.
Sure. I do have a hardware idea actually, so maybe I'll get their contact information.
Yeah. And it'll only cost you 20% too.
Right.
It's really interesting because the more we talk about it, initially, like when you talk about your Indiegogo campaign not being successful, I think that was the biggest success you could have, because like the more I think and sit here listening to you, you're such a sharp guy, and you were successful with TIYO because you figured that it's not going to work. So that's a success.
Or not working the way it was.
You're going to have to pivot from it. And like we watched you, and we watched 10 startups do their pitch, and WagePoint was one of them. Shrad, hey Shrad.
Yeah.
But when we left, what do you mean if he's listening? Come on. When we left, I wanted to talk about yours. Like yours was the one I wanted to tell everybody about. I would never buy it. But that's the one that excited me about, and I did. I went and talked to a bunch of students about it. I showed them you had something for marketing that I could then show them,
And the reason you wouldn't buy it is because you're really good at telling people, like, I don't want to spend time with you.
Right.
Goodbye.
I don't have, unfortunately, my, yes, I have that filter taken off.
Enough.
So,
okay.
I'm just not the market for it. I'm not dating anymore. I'm a student, so I don't have a boss. So I just can't imagine. But I was really excited about it, and I could. So it's a weird place to be for you to have everybody want to talk about it and have that sort of ego rush of, oh, we've got some traction, but in reality, there's not really any sales, or there's, you have to, it's about money, right? And the buzz was huge, and everybody was talking about it, and I was a champion of yours walking around like, this thing is so cool. But everybody I talked to, nobody said, oh, I got to get one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it was weird. I didn't know how to make the sale for you or ask for the check or do the close. And I wasn't really trying to promote it. I was just excited about the idea.
Yeah.
But it was a hard sell.
But getting excited about the idea is that's important research right there, right?
Yeah.
That's the first step. And then capitalizing on that excitement is the next step.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's the things you learn, right? So, I mean, in one way, the crowdfunding campaign is great for startups to test their idea, and then it's a great stopping point, which I always knew, and I said, okay, at the end of the day, either I have a business or I don't.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot of the intricacies of crowdfunding and the issues with it. And again, it's not, if I would have done it a different way, I wouldn't say that maybe I wouldn't have failed and I would have actually got some sales. But again, there's a whole tricky thing around crowdfunding as well, and all those things I've seen. Again, you get the empty restaurant problem. Yeah. If you can't get 20 or 30% on day one, people will say like, well, you don't have any money. Like, why would I put? And I've gone to campaigns myself. I've funded probably like 20 different campaigns. I've probably spent $3,000 on Kickstarter, which is probably more than most people consider putting into those things. But again, I've seen projects I love, and they're like 20,000 out of 100,000. I'm like, oh, I love them.
Yeah.
There's a problem is that 99% of people I spoke to didn't even know what Kickstarter was. And if they don't know what Kickstarter is, they're not going to know what Indiegogo is.
Yeah, there's too much education for you to start.
There's not enough education just to sell the damn thing. And a lot of people, even, my wife, she works in an insurance company. Yeah. She works with a lot of people who are probably in their 40s or 50s, so a little less tech savvy. They think the idea is awesome. So I could use this. I love it. And she's like, well, go to the site and buy it. And they're like, oh, well, I'll just wait for it to come on a store shelf.
Yeah. Right.
And they don't understand that.
As seen on TV.
As seen on TV. If it doesn't get the funding, it never makes it there.
Sure.
And then a lot of people go to the site and they couldn't even figure out how to buy the thing.
But, this once again brings up a very good point, which ties into something we said before, was that, so many startups are creating products to serve their own market, their own niche, their own ecosystem. And so when somebody like yourself creates a product that is going outside of that ecosystem, that is actually appealing possibly, arguably, more to people who are not the high level of tech savvy kind of individuals, people who would just wait for it to come out in the store. Yeah. Then then what do you do when the tools that you need to get to that point are only accessible by people who are tech savvy and highly operating in that ecosystem, right?
It's one of the things that I've learned. Definitely the distribution channels and whatnot. I mean, if you've read the latest book by Peter Thiel, 0 to 1, it's a really, really good book. I listened to the audiobook version. Yeah. And he talks about, how to make a successful company and some of the key aspects. And And really the big thing is it's all about having a niche.
Right.
But that niche has to be in one location. They have to be easily accessible. So for PayPal, they went to eBay. Everyone was in one place.
Yep.
Right.
Facebook, they went to Harvard. They were all in one place. There's probably millions and millions of people who would love a TIYO device. And there's people who commented, I have this medical condition where, I can't remember what it's called. They fall asleep in meetings.
Right.
And they would want it when they're feeling about their fall asleep. They want to hit the button so they can excuse themselves, so they don't embarrass themselves.
Or maybe they can marry it with the armband that shocks them.
That's right. And so there's these people who want them, but they're all spread out and there's no easy way to get to them.
Right.
Or the channel, again, is the inappropriate channel. That if this thing was on the store shelf at Walmart or Canadian Tire, someone would go there and say, look, I bought this thing. And they tell their friends, go check it out, or I'll pick one up next time I'm there for you.
Right.
The problem is I can't even get there until you get that first initial funding.
It sounds like another problem that maybe a good startup could solve.
Yeah, maybe.
Work out how to connect those channels.
How to connect those
better.
channels, and
maybe that's your pivot. You just have an easy button. It's not a button to make you a phone call. It's you just press it and it buys something for you.
Yeah. Again, the people you want to get the channel would never use it.
Buy it.
They can't buy it.
They get it to buy something.
Part of this, I think, is a generational thing too, right? Like I think, 20 or 30 years from now, as long as the robots haven't all taken over by then you're going to have there won't be.
We have already taken over, Darren.
Listen to this guy. There won't be the same lack of tech savvy individuals, right? And everybody. I don't know. I can't say. I guess I can't say everybody, but I'm approaching 40 years old myself. I feel like I grew up in kind of that generation that transitioned over into the spot where we were all online and so on and so forth. But it isn't. Like when I look at my classmates, maybe half the people I went to school with are on social media.
Yeah.
Go back 10 years or 20 years,
You could sell to someone. So for me, I could sell to my parents who don't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
Most people, parents that don't have a smartphone, they don't know how to use it. They don't want to pay the money for it.
Yep.
You can buy a burner from 7-Eleven. You could use the device with it. You could use it in any country. But again, it's that channel and getting to them, because we're all of us in this room and anyone who's in this building or listening, we all live in a bubble, right? We're in a tech bubble. We know things. We know how to do things. Yep. The world's a completely different space when you look at the average Joe who's been working at Big Co for the last 30 years. Half of them don't even have a computer at home. They don't do things the way we do. They don't read the same things. It's such a different world that, again, it's really hard to market those people without those specific channels. And again, like you said, if you're targeting something that's going to hit someone 30 or under, you can use those new channels because they live in that world.
Right.
But
it's
but
there's such a huge market outside of those channels.
It's how do you get to them? You have to go to the traditional. You have to have a TV commercial. Like I never watched TV, and I think it was in a hotel, and I turned it on, and there was some rugged, semi-handsome, salt and pepper hair, 40-something-year-old, and, talking about this. He likes to travel and be independent, and the great reasons to use this site I've never heard of.
Right. Trivago.
Trivago. And I'm like,
what you're talking about.
I'm like, what the f*** is Trivago? Like who? I've never heard of this, and I'm a tech guy, and I look at travel sites, and I'm like, this is one of those ones where they're like, I'm going to go after the people who are 40+, who watch TV still. Yeah. They see commercials. They want to relate to someone who's kind of around their age, who still seems who's kind of cooler.
The wind is blowing at him a little bit.
At him, right? And it just seems like, I'm like, wow, is that how I have to advertise to reach some of these people?
It's like every time I see a Cialis commercial, I think I have to buy 2 bathtubs and put them on a hill and hold my wife's hand when I'm 60. For some reason.
Maybe you do. Listen, guys, we're coming up on we're coming up on our time limit here. So let's before we completely wrap things up, let me just ask, Ivan, do you know what's the next step for you here now? Are you moving in a completely different direction? Are you going to still explore things a little bit in the This Is Your Out space? Or
This Is Your Out. I'm exploring a few different opportunities to take different markets and sell it for slightly different purposes. It's just a matter of, does it make sense? Is the effort worth it? Or do I just sort of table it for now? Doing freelance work, continue to do. I'm a full stack web developer, .NET experience, a lot of cloud experience if you're looking for anyone, if you're listening. But so that's what I've been doing and kind of looking at different opportunities. So I've been doing some freelance work that's given me some few interesting opportunities to go deeper into areas I don't know about.
Sure.
As well, I've been approached by a number of startups to potentially join as a CTO or first technical lead and stuff like that. Or for me, I'm an entrepreneur and I never want to stop doing what I like to do.
Yeah. One way or the other, you're not going to be sitting around twiddling your thumbs or anything.
No. It's basically, it's keeping alive, reliquefying after spending all my money on TIYO and then seeing what's the next opportunity.
Yep.
And it just gives me the time to sort of pick which one I want to take. And after doing 2 startups and learning a lot, I know a lot better to kind of say for the third one, how do I, avoid doing the things that are, that I don't like doing, I'm bad at, and maximizing like, okay, here's the things I know I need to do better next time to be successful. And then you look at a lot of people and they've kind of had that journey, and I'm at that point where I'm thinking a little more before I jump headlong into something. So who knows in the next few weeks, months, or whatever what I jump into next. But
we'll have to track with you and let people know what's the next big thing.
But I'll be out there,
awesome.
and I like coming out to events and being around the hub and staying in the startup community, because that's where my passion is. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm always happy to share.
Let me get one nugget from you, because I've always wanted to talk to you about music, and we never just have a chance because we're both so busy. So give me one new band or something to listen to when I get home to research. Not too heavy, maybe Mudvayne or somewhere around there.
So it sounds like you like new metal, so we don't really listen.
Mudvayne
go
like
new
a
metal
good name
for me.
A band, actually.
So I don't really listen to new metal. That's kind of like the early gateway for real metal.
Right?
Sorry,
but New York City hardcore stuff. Or I've got a cousin that's on. He's on, what is it? Ice Cube, Sub-Zero. He's in New York City hardcore stuff, but
no. So
give me something to research or to listen to. So if you want to
get into
music.
It's not a simple question, because it depends what type of music you like, depends what type of metal you like, and what direction you want to go. There's many different subgenres, and they all sound very different. So personally, I like
not too heavy Norwegian stuff, like some of that stuff over in Europe is pretty crazy.
Every country has every different style, right? So it's hard to classify. So again, there's progressive, there's symphonic, there's power, there's neoclassical, there's melodic death, and there's the really hard stuff, which I don't really care for, because I don't feel it has very much melody or value in it. So I always say, one of the best bands that I really like, check out Opeth.
Opeth?
Opeth. O-P-E-T-H. Opeth.
Okay.
So they're
interesting.
Swedish. They're progressive and kind of black metal. Their newer stuff's a lot softer. They don't do as much of the growls, but you go back 3 or 4 albums, and it's like some of the best music you'll ever hear in your life.
Cool.
And it combines.
I'm down with that. I want the best music I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. And the other one I like, another progressive band, which is more progressive, and most people wouldn't even realize it's metal, is Dream Theater.
Okay.
Which is some of the best musicians in the world, and it's hard to argue.
We'll have to tag those guys on Twitter when we post the podcast. Let them know that we're talking about them.
Awesome. I'm sure they're dying to know.
There you go.
Well thanks. That's good nuggets.
No, that's awesome. So let's wrap things up here, guys. Thank you, our listeners, for joining us on another episode of TSP Weekly. Thank you once again to can we thank Velocity or Communitech?
Let's just thank the Tannery.
Communitech. So we'll thank you. They're the ones who actually booked the room for us. So yes, thank you, Communitech, for letting us record in your space here.
You're the best.
Please feel free to send us your comments, your questions, your criticisms, your feedback at feedback@tspweekly.com, or you can just drop us a comment or two on the website, which is tspweekly.com. So, for myself, Darren Conley, my co-host, Stephen Campbell, and our guest, Mr. Ivan Lukianchuk.
You made it.
Thank you very much for joining us here today, guys, and we'll see you all next week.